You're looking at some embers of a little bonfire that I had in my backyard. I want to ask you something. How long do you think you could put your hand in those coals before you would quickly pull them out and save yourself from those flames? Another question. You have a child and you love that child dearly. Could you ever imagine you taking the hand of that child and putting them in these hot embers? A human being that would do that kind of a thing to one of their children, our society here in the United States would call mentally ill or a pervert, a sick person who should be locked up. And yet, here in the United States, there are millions and millions of Christians who go to church every Sunday. And they are taught that billions upon billions of human beings, not just their hand, but their entire body, will be thrown into something far worse than these embers and consigned there for all eternity. Not a couple of seconds just to see what hot fire feels like, but to be tortured, tormented, terrified in flames much hotter than these forever and ever. So, a human being who puts a hand of one of their children in a fire like this is insane. We all agree. And yet, on Sunday morning, we listen to eternal damnation preaching and say that a God of love, all-powerful, all-knowing, can send billions upon billions of his own children into eternal flames, and say that it is holy and righteous. Dear Christian, can you not see how insane the church has become after 1,600 years of ridiculous teachings like a hell of eternal damnation? If somehow a spark from this fire has dropped into your mind and has caused you to think, visit tentmaker.org and whatthehellishell.com and find some reasonable answers. A God who is love and all-powerful has a better fate for mankind than to send them to coals like the ones you're looking at right now. Please, for the sake of your children, for the sake of your community, for the sake of this country, and for the sake of the world, look at these flames. For those of you who have watched any of Tentmaker Ministries videos or Gary Amaralt's videos, you know that I do a lot of Bible digging. I study a lot of textbooks and lexicons, concordances, Bible dictionaries. I do a lot of study in church history. And I'm convinced that theologians, ever since about the 4th century, have really done a terrible task to Christians, to the world at large. The Bible, they tainted it. They polluted it with some really major bad translations. I'm going to give some examples in videos in the days ahead of some of the examples of the kind of terrible translating that has been going on. And I believe translating that serves the purpose of power-hungry people, that serves the purpose of people who want to terrorize people, who want to keep people in fear. Because the Bible says that what he's looking for, what Jesus is looking for, is people of faith. And the greatest way to destroy faith is to fill the people with fear. And those of you who have studied church history, you know about the Dark Ages, and you know the fear, the terror that theologians put into people. Not only theologians, but the rabbis. The rabbis terrorized their people as well. And I imagine so did the clerics of Islam. I don't know, I haven't studied that much Islamic history, but I imagine the clerics of Islam probably did the very same thing. But I'm a Christian, and I'm more concerned about what theologians and priests have done to terrorize the world than what Jews and Muslims have done. This section, this video, deals with one word and its derivatives in the Bible. And I want to show that this word has been horribly translated. And this translation has really given God a black eye. I mean, more than a black eye. It has totally changed the nature and the character of who he is. It's totally changed the plan of salvation that the Bible lays out from Genesis to Revelation. This mistranslation of one Greek word, basanos, in just a few places in the Bible have completely changed the meaning of the good news. This mistranslation of this Greek word basanos and its derivatives. And the derivatives I'm talking about are, where is it? Here it is. Basanizo, to torment. Basanismos, torment, and basanistes, tormentor. This word, we should really know what the heck this word really means. And the Strong's Concordance, the theological dictionaries, if you go to them, they will not help you. As a matter of fact, I believe that the editors of these Bible helps have purposely hid the truth of what these words truly mean. They do not mean torment, tormentor, terrorize, terrify. That's the way that most of the English Bible translators have used that word basanos, basanistes, tormentor. You know what a basanistes was in Jesus' day and before? He was basically an IRS agent. He was a tax collector. We read an account in Matthew 18. There's a parable that Jesus explains of a person who refused to forgive someone, although he owed a great debt. And this king heard about it, and therefore he took this man and brought him to the tormentors. He put him in jail, put him to the King James, the New King James says, the torturers. He brought them to the torturers, and that he would remain in their possession until he paid everything that was due to the king. I can't read the whole thing because it's just really too long. I've only got 15 minutes to explain this. That word torture, in the Greek days, what that was a man who worked for a king, someone of nobility, who had servants, who had slaves, who had lots of property, who had people that were in basically serfdom to him. And this parable, understand it, we're talking about a parable here. This parable, a man owed, and the context of this parable was forgiveness. Jesus said to forgive all. And that if you don't forgive, it won't be forgiven you. He didn't say we're going to torture you until you forgive. Here's how the story goes. There's a man who owed a great deal of money to a king. And the king wanted to settle accounts. He wanted to clear all the debts. Well, this man was brought to the king, and he couldn't pay. So this man, this basanistes, this person, he was in charge of putting that man in custody and going and looking at this man's estate. If he had a wife or children, he might sell that wife and children to slavery. If he had some gold, he might take that gold. Cattle, he might take the cattle. Or land, whatever it was that the man had. He put a value on that material and then sold the material to settle the account. And the man who owed that money would remain in prison until he was tested, until he was essayed, until his goods were valued and the debt was settled. That's what a tormentor, a basanistes was. Today, if you owe the government money, they're going to send a basanistes after you. They're going to send the King James calls him a torturer. Well, maybe you might want to call an IRS agent torturer. But so far we haven't come to that place where we allow them to put us on the rack or put thumb screws on us and exact years and years of pain and torture to pay our IRS debts. But the idea behind this tormentor was a person who evaluated what you were worth and then settled your financial account. The Kittle says that one of the ways that this word is used is in judicial it's in here somewhere. Judicial sufferings. That's how they likened it. Well, if you lose money that you owe to somebody, I guess you're going to suffer a little bit, but you're not being tortured. You're not being put into a rack. Where does that word torment come from? It's a Latin word. It comes through French, and then from French it goes back to Latin. I have it somewhere here, and I didn't bring it with me. But it literally means to put to the rack, to twist, to put the screws on you. It's an old French Latin word. And that's literally what they did. That the Roman Catholic Church, they put you on the rack. They twisted you. They squeezed you. Well, those same Dark Age theologians that tortured people to test their faith, today the theologians are twisting the truth. They're twisting the meaning of the Bible. And that twisting that they're doing, the lies that come out about God and about what the Bible really says, that twisting has tormented and tortured and terrorized many people on the face of this earth. And it's time to stop it. The word basanos, to torment, basanizo, basanistes. You want to know what a basanizos is? There is what the King James said in Revelation 20:10, where the false prophet and the beast are thrown in the lake of fire to be tormented day and night forever and ever. Tormented? There. That's what it is. A black stone. It's also called a Lydia stone. It was called a touchstone. It was called an Indian stone. And you know what that stone was for? It was used to determine the quality, the value of gold among the merchants 2,000 years ago. And you know what? They still use it today. Here is a gold, silver, platinum touchstone kit. And it consists of this black stone, some acids. You ever hear of the acid test? Well, this kit is what the acid test is all about. You take a piece of gold that you don't know the value of. You strike that gold against this touchstone, and it leaves a mark. And then you put this acid on that mark, that piece of gold, that thin line of gold. And then you compare the color of that on the touchstone to one of these needles. And the point of each of these needles has gold or platinum or silver of a certain carat. Here's one 10 carats, 14 carats, 18 carats, and 22 carats. This is what the lake of fire and the torment that goes on in the lake of fire is all about. The lake of fire is a symbol to determine your worth, to determine your quality, to determine how much truth is in you, to determine the works that are in you. That's what the lake of fire symbolizes. It's your touchstone. It's a theon fire. It's a fire of sulfur. Did you know that the sulfur, theon, in the Bible was actually a positive term, that sulfur was used to purify temples? Did you know that even today that many healing salves have sulfur in them? So the lake of fire, it's a divine fire. It's to determine your worth. It's to determine, the Bible talks about your works. If they're wood, hay, and stubble, they'd be burned up. But if they're gold, silver, precious stones, they would be saved. The book of Revelation is a book of symbols. The very first sentence in the book of Revelation says, these things signify, they signify things that must shortly take place. The symbols. But those symbols point to a reality, and that reality is not God who commands you to forgive everybody, just like that story in Matthew. The context of that parable is forgiveness. God commands you to forgive, forget, let go, release the debt. But we Christians, through our abused false Bibles produced by Dark Age theologians, we have created and concocted a scenario in which God does not forgive most of mankind. Not only does he not forgive them, but he tortures them with exquisite pains and exquisite worms and bodies that never die, and they die and then come back again, and the flesh falls off and it comes back again. The most horrible, horrible images that have given kids nightmares and that have caused people to commit suicide. That's what the Bible translators, and I'm talking NIV, New American Standard, Amplified, New Living Translation, the editors of these translations, and leading theological books like Kittle's Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, and things like Strong's Concordance. The people who've put these things together, they're cheating, they're lying, and they know it. Let me give you another example here. Here is an old Strong's Concordance. Well, I say it's not really old. It's a 21st century. But this one over here is a 20th century. They're supposed to be reproductions of Strong's Concordance, a guy who lived over 100 years ago, and yet they're changing his work. The original, or the first Strong's that I have here, the Abington Strong's, under basanos, has, as the first definition, a touchstone. Now, they don't tell you what a touchstone is. They just say a touchstone, and then behind it they say torture, torment. But at least they gave a hint that this word is a touchstone, and then you can go look up what a touchstone is and maybe put two and two together. But then the next edition, another edition of Strong's, produced by Zondervan Publishing, the strongest Strong's, under the same word, basanos, they just have, and the Strong's number 931, they have torment, severe pain, torture, torments. They've completely eliminated the fact that we're dealing with a touchstone, something to determine the quality of gold, the value of gold. My dear brothers and sisters, I beg you, do some homework. There are a handful of words. That same passage that I just quoted, Revelation 20:10, where the beast and the false prophet and other people are thrown in the lake of fire to be tormented, tested, evaluated, day and night. The King James says forever and ever. The NIV says forever and ever. The New American Standard has forever and ever. That's a lie. We know that in eternity there is no day and night. So Revelation 20:10 says whatever's going on here, there's a day and night. That forever and ever in the Greek is aeonas ton aeonon. And it does not mean forever and ever. It means for the ages of the ages. The Bible speaks of at least 5 ages, all of which have beginnings and have ends. And there are probably more than 5. But each age has an end. The term aeonas ton aeonon is like Lord of Lords, King of Kings. It's not forever and ever. A terrible mistranslation. Now, Young's literal and concordant literal and Jonathan Mitchell translation and Weymouth's New Testament and 20th century New Testament, many other 20th century and even earlier, as late as the 18th century, there are translations that have corrected some of these words, not all of them. You should go and look. You should go and find out for yourself what is going on. I'm telling you that the main Bible publishers, Zondervan, Nelson, main Christian Bible publishers, some of whom are owned by Jews. Can you imagine that? Christian publishing companies owned by Jews who really do not want Christianity to thrive in the world. They have a vested interest to control companies like Zondervan and change the Bible, change the texts to bring Judaism, to conform Christianity to the Jewish agenda. There's a bunch of hanky-panky going out there in the world. There are people who are terrorizing innocent children with images of hell. There is no hell. There's a God who's the Savior of all mankind. Jesus said, "And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all mankind unto myself." When he went to the cross, he said, "It is finished." What was finished? He died for the sin of the world. He's the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. He will draw all mankind unto himself. Now that is forgiveness. The very people who crucified him, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." You and I have all put him to the cross. The Jews put him to the cross. Christians have put him to the cross. Atheists have put him to the cross. We have all put him to the cross. And the Father will forgive us all for our terrible, terrible mischaracterization of who God is and who our neighbor is. Revelation 20:10 talks about the smoke of their torment rising up continually, day and night, for the ages of the ages, forever and ever, the King James, a mistranslation. Smoke. You know, if you take this acid and you put it on some of these metals, you know what happens? Smoke rises. I took one of these and put it on a copper penny. And this smoke, this acidic smoke came up. The lake of fire, if you can liken it to like a refiner's fire. The stuff comes up, the dross comes to the top, and you can see how much impurities are in there. The book of Malachi talks about the Levites being purged, being put into fire, purified as silver. For what purpose? To torture them, to put them in anguish, to inflict exquisite pain upon them? No, so that they might offer a righteous offering unto the Lord. That's the kind of imagery that really goes on behind these words that have been so grossly mistranslated by leading Bible translators and editors of these books and these Bibles. Gross mischaracterization of who God is. The book, the Bible, is full of over 200 different types of figures of speech. Hebrew is a highly allegoric, highly metaphoric, highly symbolic language. And if you take those symbols literally, you will distort, you will twist the meaning beyond the author's intent. And that's what Christians have done. That's what Bible teachers, seminary teachers who have taught people to read the Bible literally, when in fact the Bible is full of parables, full of allegories, full of poetry, full of metaphors, similes, figures of speech of all kind, irony, that should not be translated and taken literally. And yet theologians who like to use fear to hold people in church institutions, they've not only twisted the word in the scriptures, but they've also given us false ways of understanding what the Bible really means. If you watch television today and the movies, it's full of terrorism, it's full of violence, it's full of wickedness, it's full of evil. And that stuff that Hollywood produces reflects what is in the heart of America. Our heart is full of terror. Our heart is full of fear. Our heart is full of anger. And we've projected our anger, we've projected our stuff, we've projected it onto God. The Bible translators and theologians have helped with that projection. It's time to stop it. You will find far more terrorists in the institutions in the United States, whether it be the media, entertainment, educational, military, political, business. You'll find more terrorists there than you will find in the caves of Afghanistan. Because the very foundation of our society, the Bible, has been twisted, grossly misinterpreted. And we have become that stuff. We've been terrorized by the Bible. And we've made God a terrorist. And so now we're going all over the world looking for terrorists. Jews and Christians running all over the world, sending our military all over the world looking for terrorists. When we should be looking into our own institutions. Judaism, Christianity, the foundations of all our other institutions. You want to find terror? Look at Hollywood. Look at the games we play with our video games, and then see what we do in other countries around the world. We turn the games into reality. May God forgive us all. Fortunately, my Bible says that He will. He'll forgive us for the terrorist activities we've perpetrated on mankind for thousands of years. There's some places in the Bible where the word basanos and its derivatives have to do with stress, have to do with being taxed, have to do with being tested, where nature, winds, trials are testing us, are putting pressure on us. That's a legitimate use of the word basanistes, basanos, basanismos. That's legitimate. But to uniformly put the word terror, terrorize, terrorist, torment behind those words, that's grossly unjust. And it completely mischaracterizes God. That's the thing we have to really understand. This abuse of translating with this word and aeon and the hell words, Gehenna, Hades, Tartarus, Sheol, and the judgment words, krima, crises, katakrima. The way leading Bible translations have mistranslated these words, it has grossly mischaracterized God and His plan of salvation. Grossly mischaracterized it. And it has caused us of the Western civilization who profess to be under the Judeo-Christian ethic, it's caused us to be the chiefest of hypocrites around the world. We have a God who says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And we go around the world blowing them to hell. We have Christian chaplains who read, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, and then bless Christian soldiers to go out there and kill by the millions. We send them to foreign countries and drop atomic bombs on not only their heads, but in Japan, where we dropped the atomic bombs. We had Christian missionaries there preaching the gospel, and we dropped those bombs on their heads.